Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We're broadcasting from Mile High altitude, 5,280 feet, where we look forward to seeing you in June 3rd to 6th. And make sure, if you're listening, watching, wherever it is, to make sure to hit subscribe, whether it be on YouTube or Stitcher or iTunes. Make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any Mile High Tick. Today, I am super thrilled to be introducing and being in conversation with Dr. Trent Scheidecker, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, so he might correct me.
That's perfect.
I did perfectly, good. Dr. Trent, about the art of chiropractic, about chiropractic philosophy and science, and he also will be sharing in a breakout session at Mile High, which is outstanding because we're focusing on the art of chiropractic. Dr. Trent, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think it's an honor to be working alongside colleagues with the same amount of passion that I have for chiropractic, and I don't think this short episode is going to be enough time for both of us to convey all that's on our hearts and minds. So I'll try to share enough to spike a little interest in connecting at Mile High when I do the breakout session.
And I feel what you're saying is very true. It's going to be just scratching the surface. And speaking of that, let's start with this, because we were just talking about people that impacted your life. You talked about Reggie Gold and a first program time you heard him speak. Let's share a little bit about, or could you share a little bit about how you found your way into chiropractic, where you went to school, graduated, and how you found your chiropractic path?
Yeah, let's do the Mile High overview. I got into chiropractic very similar to a lot of chiropractors. I had a personal experience. My personal experience was in high school. I noticed a drastic difference with my performance, and I believe that's what led me into the route of being a chiropractor, promoting chiropractic. It wasn't so much an injury, it was a quality of life difference, game changer for myself. I joined I became a student at Northwestern Health Sciences University in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 2006, and had very little understanding of what chiropractic was at the time. But by 2008, I believe Reggie Gold came to our school. He was invited by a group of students that had enough philosophical understanding to invite Reggie to our campus, and he had the auditorium packed. I think there was at least 200 students, teachers there. And at the end of his presentation, he did the letter N lecture. It was a beautiful lecture by him, classic lecture, if you know exactly what I'm talking about. And at the end of the lecture, he invited any student that wanted to come spend a couple days with him and Irene in Philadelphia. He was living in his condo in Philadelphia at the time. And myself and 3 other students jumped on the invite. We bought tickets, went out and spent the weekend with him. Irene had some late night conversations with some cold beer, and spent a lot of time shadowing other docs in the Philadelphia, New Jersey area, such as Joe Strauss and Mark Olstein, and a few others, not to forget their names off the top of my head. But by the end of the weekend, it was a no-brainer. I really got to become a student of Joe Strauss's writing and practice style with his a GPC box style fee system. We can talk later about that if that needs to be brought up in the conversation. But just realizing that there was nothing like that in Minnesota at the time. There was no cash practice, no chiropractors promoting chiropractic for a lifetime benefit. And so when I graduated in 2010, it was a no-brainer to open a practice with a philosophical background that Reggie led me down the path on.
Wow, that's beautiful. It's beautiful to hear. And those people that you mentioned, almost every single one of them was a huge influence in my life in different ways. So I feel like I have a common path here. Let's delve a little bit deeper. You now run ChiroWay and have a couple offices. Tell people about where you are now, fast forward.
fast forward. Let's do another Mile High overview. You can take that tagline from me here. Mile High overview is 2010 when I opened up ChiroWay in Woodbury, Minnesota, and about a year after what I would consider just massive success from scratch, 100% cash practice, no insurance, promoting everything that we all share in our philosophical conversations with our community, and people were buying into it, still bought into it. And I had a colleague by the name of Michael Madison reach out to me and say, I see what you're doing. I like what you're doing. I'm burnt out. I'm doing it the exact opposite way, high overhead, insurance, and I just can't get my clients to buy into the message I'm sharing. And so I invited him to come out and practice with me, and I kind of flipped a coin on expansion, because I knew that Mike did not want to practice in Woodbury with me. And so the coin landed on franchising instead of corporate expansion. And I asked my wife to leave her full-time salaried position job that she was working, and said, I think we need to start another company. And so we started a franchise company, and we've been franchising ChiroWay Center since 2011. And the unique aspect about our franchise model is it's 100% chiropractic owned. So we have a mission to help more communities benefit from chiropractic care. And we want that to be in the hands of the chiropractor who owns the practice and who's working in the practice. Since 2011, we have 9 locations, all individually operated and owned by chiropractors. One of those locations is mine. I plan on maintaining my practice until the day I can no longer adjust. And we have a mission. We want to keep growing. We want to keep expanding so that more people can benefit from the care and the art of chiropractic that we're discussing here today.
Wow, so outstanding, and we need more of that in chiropractic, and more resources for people to be able to practice this way, or possibly hook up with you guys in terms of franchise. Let's talk about the analysis you use. Now, I connected with you because Nick Spano recommended it, and I was talking to him about advanced muscle palpation, and he said to connect with you. So a lot of people, I took Nick's classes way back when I was in school, and they're amazing. And a lot of people don't even barely learn palpation in school, period. Can you talk a little bit about what advanced muscle palpation is?
I don't know if I can do a little bit. This might drag on a little bit. You just raise your hand and stop me if we have to interject here. So let's go back to the beginning where Reggie invited us out. One of the beautiful characteristic of Reggie was he could answer any question that you had. It didn't have to be off topic. I mean, like, you would just ask him something and his answer would come just off the tip of his tongue, hence the great communicator he was.
Yes.
And most of the time we spent with him, he talked very little. Actually, I feel like I share that. I don't talk unless there's a question like you're directing at me. And one of the questions I brought to the table when I flew out to Philadelphia was what he recommends for technique, because we were not getting anything sufficient at Northwestern that gave me the certainty and the conviction in providing a proper chiropractic analysis and adjustment. Mm-hmm. And he smiled and said, well, that's easy. You just have to watch this video called Gentle Adjusting. I don't know if you've ever seen that video before. Right. And he goes, and then you need to reach out to my colleague, Nick Spano, because shortly after I opened a practice I believe it was in the late 50s, early 60s, he realized that what he was being taught at Palmer by BJ himself in regards to the hole-in-one method didn't make complete sense to him and his logical reasoning. And so he invented his own analysis. He literally created it from scratch. And the analysis he created was termed at the time vertebrae. And vertebrae was created and taught by him, and handed off to Nick Spano when Nick was in school at ADIO, which was part of Reggie and Joe Strauss's movement to keep chiropractic within the profession. Long story short, Nick has been spending the last 35 years teaching, like you said, teaching within Sherman, teaching across the country through his events and through his advanced muscle palpation manual that he documented many years ago. And so I bought into it and I started using it in practice. And I realized that it was a game changer for me to connect with people in my community on how I was going to help them. And then also have a valid approach to showing an outcome with the care, because you can't just say, this is what I'm going to do. You got to say, this is how I'm going to help you. And then apply the approach, and then let the consumer experience the benefit. And then the consumer return says, yeah, this is working. I see what you're saying. And it kind of had a complete picture in my practice. And so I've been a student of the art of advanced muscle palpation for the past 10 years. And in the past 10 years, I've been keeping track of and documenting the number of adjustments I've made. And I believe I'm somewhere right around 1 million chiropractic adjustments underneath my belt and underneath my hands. And it just so happened that Nick Spano was coming to a point in his career where he needed to take a step back from leading the events and leading the analysis that was created by Reggie and handed off to Nick. And so he reached out to me a couple months ago and asked if I'd be willing to lead the crusade for keeping this analysis up and alive and well. So I took the offer. And here we are. This is kind of going to be one of the kickoff years where I plan on not only getting the technique out there, but keeping the technique in front of the eyes and the consumers of the profession across the board through digital presence, and just more or less a cohesive connection on the objective at hand.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I have other questions I want to ask you. Before that, this seems like a good time to mention how can people learn more about advanced muscle palpation?
That's easy. Just Google advanced muscle palpation and you'll find our website, you'll find our Facebook page. And Nick spent the last 20 plus years, 30 plus years working on getting people in front of this technique. And so there's a decent amount of people that are supporters of AMP, is what we call it, on Facebook. And so I plan on using those two resources as kind of the foundation for staying connected with everyone that has this interest in learning more about it, or refresher. Like you said, sometimes you learn something many moons ago and you remember how valid it is, but you don't necessarily remember the actual steps to take in the process to create the validity within it. And so the name of the game for me is getting out there and making sure that this analysis has a refresher and an introduction across the country. And what Nick did so eloquently was connect with chiropractors around the world as well. We sometimes forget that we've got colleagues in different countries that share the same passion as well.
Yes. And I agree. It's very important, because you would think, as an art, right, the art of chiropractic, you would think that palpation would be something that would be highly valued and highly taught in school, and people were masterful in it. And that's not necessarily the case in many schools, and I don't think that's a secret. So, I'm really grateful that you're taking this up, and that Nick has passed that on to you. It really means a lot to me. I want to ask this: why is, in your take, why is advanced muscle palpation congruent with our philosophy?
Yeah, I knew you were going to lead into this, and this is another conversation that we'll have to maybe do a separate episode for, because of the length of my answer is just never short enough. And I'll try to keep it on point here, and you just raise your hand if it's
okay.
going too far down the rabbit hole. I believe with my professional certainty and with my experience within the approach that advanced muscle palpation really has this holistic approach that utilizes both philosophical tenets, philosophical soundness. It has both basic and applied scientific principles that support the philosophical objective at hand. And then it also has this beautiful technical validity to it that ties in both philosophical objective, which is to locate, analyze, and correct vertebral subluxation due to the fact that the subluxation is interfering with the body's mental impulses, which create less of an expression of the body's innate potential or innate intelligence. And then tying this all together and saying these are where the adjustments should be facilitated based off of the body's innate attempt of correcting the subluxation. And that's where AMP has such a sound approach that Reggie created. He literally took a step back when he was in practice I think he was seeing 1,000 to 2,000 people a week in the bowling alley practice that he worked out of. And I think he asked himself a question that said, well, if the body has this innate intelligence and subluxation is detrimental to the intelligence, wouldn't it try to self-correct and have an attempt to try to realign and readjust on a consistent basis? And he therefore ended up with a soft tissue ligament and myofibrils that are on the not the necessarily superficial layer like you think when you think of muscles, but more on the intrinsic layer. And if we look into the Gray's Anatomy and we pull up some of our old neurospinal dynamic muscle part one boards that we learned, we realized that at the very core of the stability that our spine houses is little multifidi and rotators and intrinsic muscles that have a direct neural connection to the CNS that keeps us in proper alignment. And therefore, our conclusion and thesis in AMP is that if they're keeping us in proper alignment, they're going to attempt to self-correct wherever that subluxation is putting stress on that mental impulse. And that's where the art comes in with the palpatory understanding of what a multifidi is, the suboccipital triangle, and knowing which one is rectus capitis posterior major, which one is superior oblique, and being able to differentiate some real intrinsic muscles and say, this is a working muscle attempting to self-correct itself. We just have to phonetically introduce an appropriate amount of force at the right direction and allow the adjustment to take place.
And I love that you use the word allow, that we allow, because that's a very important point of differentiating manipulation and adjusting. And so often people
100%.
Have talked about have brought chiropractic down to a manipulation physical therapeutics level, which is not obviously the art of chiropractic. And just using the word that we're allowing the adjustment to take place and we're applying a force is a concept that sadly many chiropractors don't even learn.
And I want to add to that. This is, you and I share so many common characteristics and backlog. Another common foundation to advanced muscle palpation is it has a very vitalistic and very tonal approach to analysis. It has a mechanistic approach to facilitating the correction, and that mechanistic approach is our two hands are introducing a force. Which there's two sides to the coin always. There's always a dichotomy in this world, and you got to have this fine balance. And I feel very confident that advanced muscle palpation is a great introduction into our vitalistic philosophy that D.D. Palmer was the first to introduce this vitalism into the profession, not to adjust someone who was deaf, but to adjust someone to figure out why this person's body was not functioning properly. And that's what differentiates what you were saying with manipulation and adjustment, is that vitalistic approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And sadly, And part of why we're putting on Mile High and focusing on the art and talking this on the podcast, and we're doing this Art of Chiropractic Summit that people are participating in, is because people aren't learning that in school, sadly. And I know that well, we don't need to name schools.
Yep.
But with that,
Different conversation, different day.
different conversation, different time. But what's one thing that you wish you had known when you began your career?
That's a really big question, and I'll try to keep the answer as short and short and sweet as possible. But I'm going to lead it to where this whole conversation is going, and that is I wish I would have surrounded myself with more colleagues and more like-minded professionals, chiropractors, that is, at an earlier stage in school, more than anything else. But I feel confident that being a practicing chiropractor is not easy, and a lot of times the big name chiropractors across the industry will not give homage to who's helping them do what they're doing. And so I played college sports. I played Division II football, and I grew up with the concept that you played a position, but you had a team on both sides of the ball that shared that common objective of winning the game, and that's called teamwork. And I feel like our profession lacks a lot of teamwork in certain areas. I think the art is one of them. The philosophy is another one. Science is another one. We all have this like, hey, this is the way it should be, but we don't necessarily have this cohesiveness of a team effort of sharing the objective at hand. And that's where my mentor, Joe Strauss, really left his professional calling as an author, saying, hey, we need to be cognitive that the philosophy was written over 100 years ago by the Palmers. There's nothing wrong with refining the philosophy as we become smarter and as we glean more along the way. And as we refine the philosophy, we unite under that common objective. And my looking back on it is I probably excluded more chiropractors early on in my career that didn't think the way I was thinking. And so for you to invite all these different analytical approaches out to a summit shows volumes of your cohesive mindset. And I applaud you for that, because I share that now more than I did early. I excluded a lot of people just based off of having maybe a different philosophical view on something.
Well, I thank you for saying that. And I think in our profession, that's about, and I really appreciate you saying that. And that's why I'm doing it. In a profession that's about healing and connection and communication and community, we need more of that in chiropractic. So, and that's what I really feel a big part of my purpose. So thank you for noticing that. And I'm glad that you participate in this. And so, what advice would you want to give someone in chiropractic practice who wants to pursue a career similar to the direction you've gone?
Yeah, regardless of the direction they go, my advice across the board for our profession and for the students out there is we need more students, we need more docs, we need more chiropractors. Not being afraid of failing. I think failure is the biggest obstacle to our profession growing and reaching more people for chiropractic. And the fear of failing and learning something new is probably at the very core of it. I'm excited to come out in June to the event, actually not to present, but just to learn from some of the icons that I know very little about. I understand what Gonstead is. I understand what Nuka is. I understand all these concepts that are out there, but I don't understand it on the level of some of these presenters that are going to be able to do the Mile High overview of it. And so we need to be not afraid of failing with searching for more truth, and not afraid of failing for trying something in practice that is right and ethical. I stand very firm in my approach that I have a practice that I stand 100% behind on the ethical side across the board. So I don't say or do or charge anything that I feel needs to be done just to be done. I do it because I know that there's 100% cohesiveness and ethical responsibility between myself and the consumer receiving the care. And I feel that we need to support more students in that approach, where they may not have all the pieces to the puzzle on how to practice chiropractic, and we can offer them mentorship and guidance, such as events like this, to say, you can do it, and we support you, and we're here for you. Now get off the dock and jump in the water. We have a saying here in Minnesota: don't put your foot in the cold water in springtime to feel how cold that water is. You need to jump off the dock, and you jump into the lake regardless of how cold it is, and the body will be shocked and it will be cold, but then acclimation and adaptation and will soon come with it, and you'll realize what your tolerance is, and your tolerance is growth, and we need more of that in our profession to help these students and docs that need us.
I love it. And growth, that's the key to growth, what you just described. And a lot of people, that can stay comfortable, and that's not necessarily where growth lives, right? So, and I look behind you, and the books behind you, we have a lot of same things on our bookshelf. I see all the blue books. I've got a bunch of mine behind me right there.
That's awesome.
Hearing Strauss and reading him when I was in chiropractic school is one of the most important things to me. What are some of the best resources that have helped you along the way?
Yeah, that is an easy answer. First, if you haven't listened to and really comprehended all that Reggie Gold had to share in his philosophical audio collection, reach out to either one of us. I'm assuming you have them as well. I've asked Irene multiple times, are you sure you're fine with me sharing Reggie's audios with colleagues and whatnot? And she always gives an abrupt but kind response and says, yeah, share the audios, get them out there, and let more students be introduced to what Reggie had to share on his philosophy nights back in the 70s, I think, late 60s, 70s in upstate New York. Reggie Gold is a great place to start. But if you already have a grasp of the philosophy and you need more clarity on that philosophy, I highly recommend starting with Joe Strauss's blue book set. And you can start with this simple one. He has like 7 or 8 in his first set, and then he has more in his complete set, which is over 20 books. And realizing that refinement is part of the search for truth. And so Joe really does a good job of refining the areas that BJ and DD did so well, of being more sporadic with their thoughts. And Joe does a really good job of simplifying some points of discussion and sticking to those points in those blue books. And then if you're already through Reggie's and you're already through Joe's, I'm on a mission to put more content out there that has both philosophical roots within a clear objective, and yet maybe a more modern way of communicating the message on a podcast that we push out to our clients at ChiroWay. It's called Today's Tick, and I'm like 60 episodes in, and I'm starting to find my vision and starting to find my objective for the podcast. And anyone's welcome to dive in and give constructive feedback, criticism, or participate, because I think we've got a big animal and we've got a big elephant to eat, and we just got to take one bite off at a time. With what R.W. Stevenson documented so eloquently with the definition of chiropractic in 1927, I believe. It's just so profound, but yet so comprehensive. And so we've got so much room for growth in those areas. Not to mention the icons like Simon. Simon Senzen does an awesome job with the history. I got one of his books, and I need to order the rest up there, along with the list could go on, but those would be some the go-tos right off the bat for chiropractic.
Yeah, there you go. The blue books and the white books. I've been calling Simon's books the white books.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'll make a recommendation based on that. One of the Strauss's books that was most impactful for me. They all were impactful, but one of the ones that was the case management for the straight chiropractor. That is, I think every
Yeah.
chiropractor student needs to read that.
Let me add a quick dialogue. I know that we're on a time crunch here, but that book gave me inspiration to franchise my practice, because I said, if Joe can write a book about, how to take care of people in this approach, we can duplicate a practice model with a philosophical foundation, and then certain steps in how to provide a proper orientation and dialogue on the first visit, what to say on follow-up visits, and how to proceed forward after that initial care has been delivered. I've spent the last 9-10 years franchising, documenting what we call a blueprint to our practice model. And we've got over 300 pages of content-rich information for what was an inspiration off of that book that you just mentioned.
Yeah, well, that's really exciting. And I didn't know about the podcast either. So we got to make sure when we put together the liner notes for this episode that we put a link for the podcast and in there too.
Appreciate that.
You can tune into your podcast. I'm going to tune into it. So I'm excited about
Appreciate
that. Yeah. So now, chiropractic palpation, that the advanced muscle palpation program, philosophically sound, scientifically applicable, technical validity. What can you say about that relative to those three things?
Okay, let's keep it short and sweet here, and we can dive more into it in June. I also have an event, if this goes out here in the coming weeks. We've got our first 2021 AMP boot camp is what I'm going to call it, because it's going to be an intensive 5-hour hands-on training on April 3rd in Minnesota. And you can go to the Facebook page to find more information on that. But a real short and sweet on advanced muscle palpation. It's pretty simple. The bones are connected together with ligaments and muscles, and neurologically at that segmental level is controlled innately. And when that subluxation meets the 4 criteria of a subluxation, when that vertebrae meets a criteria of the subluxation, I believe it's misalignment, it's encroachment on the nerve or neural canal, it's impingement on the nerve, and then it's interference on the mental impulse. When all 4 have been met, the body will have this self-reflex through mechanoreceptors and through a stretch reflex. And so the muscles have a major amount of neural muscle spindles intertwined into, especially at that suboccipital level, into those muscles that keep us in stability and keep us free of subluxation. And if we can be attuned with our fingertips to a working muscle, not a spastic muscle. Spastic muscle would be more along the lines of what let's see if I got his book out here. Here's another good book if you haven't read this. This was recommended by Matt McCoy, The Neurodynamics of Subluxation. What Homewood describes in this is subluxation creates not necessarily a cutoff on the nerve. It creates more spasticity. It creates more hypertonicity, and that would be more along the lines of spastic muscles. I'm not advising looking at the spastic muscle as an indicator for subluxation. No, we're looking at an innate reflex muscle that is literally flexed like a bicep curl, and it is attempting from origin to insertion, usually a segment above and below, which is beautiful how the body is created. It has checks and balances, right? And the muscles will reach from one segment up to the next and attempt to literally bring that vertebrae back into proper control, is what I say. It's not position as much as is it harmony working together. And when you attune your fingers to those working muscles, they kind of stick out like little road bumps, speed bumps. And when you find the speed bumps of that inner layer of myofibrils, all you have to do is either push, pull, or compress that muscle in the direction that that joint facet works, and you've got yourself a facilitation of correction of vertebral subluxation.
Yes, I agree. And this is going to be very exciting for you to share at that program. And again, how do people get into that? It's not a retreat, you called it. The
Boot camp.
Boot camp. How do they get into that?
Yeah, it's all online. So if you go on Facebook and you search advanced muscle palpation, you'll find our page. And then on that page, there's events section, and click on that event section and you'll see the advanced muscle palpation boot camp, April 3rd in Woodbury, Minnesota, which is in my practice. We've already got a good turnout of interest of local students and docs that show interest. If there are any docs or students around the country that are looking to travel, there's plenty of accommodations that I can help you with as well. So that in April, and then the intensive breakout session at Mile High will be another good introduction to the technique, and there should be more events to come this year as well.
Yeah, super excited about that. We need people that really are skilled at the art in our profession. And with everything that's gone on in the world in 2020 and 2021, people need us to give quality care and give care with excellence. So up-leveling our art is important for everybody. And learning maybe something that you didn't learn before. Just because you've been in a Gonstead bubble, doesn't mean that you can't grow from someone else, maybe advanced muscle palpation, maybe from an upper cervical approach. We need more of that so we can all increase our skill sets. So I really appreciate that you're doing this. Any last thing that you'd like to share to help people impact more lives?
Yeah, I think it takes massive action. It takes massive amount of work. I've got a new associate that just joined my practice within the last month, and he's given all his attempt in perfecting the art, and he can see the amount of time that's left behind or between him and what I've put into this over the past 10 years. And I feel like sometimes we want things sooner than what they can be delivered or created at. We're such a now society, especially for these students in school. They just want the massive practice, right? I see advertisement for, hey, here's the system that's going to produce the results that you dream of in the shortest amount of time. Well, my advice would be, don't discredit that, because there is probably validity in what they have to say, but also come at it from the approach that what we recommend to our clients, and that is consistency. And consistency is the key to any successful program. And sometimes consistency takes 10,000 hours. It takes 10 years to produce that year, that adjustment, that aha, whatever it is for you. It takes that long to get there. And if you've got a mindset that you're going to be a chiropractor for the next 25, 30, 40 years, just get better at the fine details with massive amount of attention to detail, day after day after day after day after day, and don't take a day off. My friend and mentor, Mark Romano, early on when I was opening in my practice, he taught me, he practiced 7 days a week, and he's like, no days off. There are no days off. People need us. I take Sundays and sometimes I take Saturdays off to rest my body and mind. But you just got to work at it and don't give up, because just because you're not there doesn't mean you can't get there over time.
Right. And I love that you said about having a 25-year or whatever horizon. Play the long game. you went through a lot of education to be able to give a very important gift, and to give less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. Play the long game, and not the overnight miracle that you're going to have.
Correct.
And give care with excellence. So thank you so much for taking the time
Yeah,
to
you're
be
welcome.
with us today, Trent. I know you're a busy dude, and I also know that you're doing it from a place of giving a lot to the profession, and really having a lot of caring for chiropractic's future, and really not only that, but the people that we all serve, because humanity needs chiropractic. So thank you so much for that. And I know people
Likewise. And
really enjoy
thank you for all you do. I think we need more of you out there, where you're inspiring me. I think we got to talk about getting a Midwest event going around here. And so there needs to be more events. There needs to be more state organizations there to protect our statutes and rules and rights. That's a whole nother podcast episode that you and I can have. There needs to be more cohesiveness to protect what we all put the key in the door and open the door for our clients on. Otherwise it is a lost arc, and not just lost art.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Appreciate you.
Wholeheartedly. Yeah, and it's the tablets are very important.
Yes.
So hey everyone, keep, as we said, hit subscribe. You never want to miss any Mile High tip. Hit registration, milehighchiroregistration.com. If you're not reserved, you got to be living under a rock. You want to be at Mile High in June, decide to pull the trigger and rise up to a higher altitude and lift up your community with chiropractic, and keep changing spines and lives and minds with chiropractic. Thank you again, Dr. Trent.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.